This is the Commercial Landscaper podcast hosted by Dave Anderson and Robert Clinkenbeard. This show will transform your leadership by developing all aspects of your life in business, family, personal and health. Only by fine-tuning yourself will you truly operate as a highly functioning leader. Welcome, Bruce Wilson. You've joined us today. We have also Dave Anderson on the call who's helping me out on these wonderful podcasts. So, Bruce, welcome today. Appreciate your time. Can you just give us a brief background of your history within the green industry?
Yeah, so I've been in it a long time. Started in the mid-'60s. Started in the tree care part of the industry and then moved into the landscape maintenance side. Joined what became Valley Crest Landscapes Maintenance Division in 71. And that was really the beginning of my career. Over that 30-year period when I worked there, I became president of the company in 79 and grew it from 7 million to 140 million, doing landscape maintenance in mostly the Sun Belt of the country. Did tree care work, did irrigation work, also maintained 28 golf courses all over the United States. A pretty broad experience in the service side of the landscape business, and then got into consulting in the year 2001. In 2003, I formed the first industry peer group of 6 business owners in different parts of the country, and that's grown. That's become the core focus of my consulting business today, where I have 8 peer groups, and they represent both maintenance and design build and construction, different segments of the industry. And also started a second company in 2011 called Conserve Land Care. We built that to 24 million and sold it last year. So now I am out of the business for the first time. And
that's good. That's awesome. Tremendous background there. So we're obviously in a situation now where it's a pretty, probably one of our most challenging times in history. And you've obviously probably, with your history in the business, gone through a lot of those ups and downs. So based on that, what would you say the 2 biggest activities or mindset should be of business owners that are going through this crisis should be doing to come out stronger at the end of this, whatever that is?
Well, I think the mindset that I think helps companies be successful is that there's always winners and losers in any of these kind of events, and you want to be one of the winners. And, if you can have that mindset that no matter what, I'm going to come out ahead on this, then you're going to be successful. And I think that more than anything would do it. The other thing is you've got to really be able to think ahead. Don't there's just tendency to look back and try to fix what's broken. And there's only so much you can do about what happened with this event. And you really got to be thinking about what you're going to be doing in the future. Look out 3, 4, 6 months. Don't just focus on yesterday.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So how important is it? I mean, you talk about, starting off, the peer group. Effectively, you're starting off the whole peer group industry. You've now got 8 peer groups. How important is it at times like this to surround yourself with either peer groups or industry mentors or just other business owners in the same scenario as you?
I think this is when the power of the peer groups really comes into play. Because right from the very get-go, these guys were on either text chains or email chains talking about how it's affecting each of them and what they're doing about it. When the loan opportunity became available, they were all over it, sharing how they were approaching it, who they were going to, what kind of luck they're having with the banks they were working with, et cetera. So, they're giving each other a lot of moral support. They're giving them heads up as to what's happening in their market with their customers, what their approach is, what's working, what's not working. And you compare that to the guy that's alone. A small business owner is basically alone. My partner originally in our consulting, we used to call it loneliness management is what we did.
So on that point, you're obviously talking to a lot of these mentors, these peer group owners. You're getting some information from them, but then you're coming back to your own company, and you're obviously that leader who's leading that huge team of people. What advice do you have for other owners and how you should conduct yourself, how you should successfully lead your team?
I think the most important thing is bring positivity to your culture and try to keep your culture alive. Don't let it dwell on woe is me and this is bad. And, you just got to keep reminding people how important it is that we keep moving ahead and that we really focus on our customers. And the big emphasis I put on it was making sure we talk to our customers. We're not just going to send them email blasts and tell them how great we are at covering our mouths and, spacing ourselves. I mean, they expect that. What we want to talk to them about is find out how it's affecting them and then be a resource to them as to how we can help them navigate through it. We don't want them in a vacuum deciding they don't need our service. If they're thinking they need to do some adjustments, we can help them adjust intelligently. And that's where I think the leadership of the owner comes in. He's got to keep everybody focused on talking to their clients and talk to your employees. Get a sense of how your employees feel about it. Some of them are scared. They're afraid they're going to get infected. They're afraid they're not going to be able to provide for their families. They're afraid they might get laid off. There are a lot of things that are going through their minds. And even though, we have no intention of laying anybody off, they're still worried about it.
Great point, Bruce. I agree with that concept that we not only need to lead within our companies and with our own staff, but also with our clients. Clients need help during these times, and helping them lead in communication is a great way to do that. In a question in a different area is, during difficult times comes also great opportunity. Where do you see potential opportunity during all of this for, businesses as, you look past today to what the future can hold?
Well, I think there's a couple. One of the big ones is you can look at your customer mix and see which segment of your customers has been impacted in a negative way. And I think it's a good opportunity to maybe rebalance your book of customers and make sure you have customers that are somewhat insulated from things like this, or where you see the vulnerability, definitely want to lighten up on that side. Because that same segment, the hospitality segment, got clobbered in 9/11, and it got clobbered again in the Great Recession, and now it's happening again. And if you're too weighted in that particular segment or some other similar segments like the oil segment, you're at risk. The other thing is, I think there's a great opportunity, especially in this industry, but probably in other service industries. There's always small startup companies that are in that $500,000 to $1.5 million range that really, it's for the owner, it's a high risk job. And if he hasn't built an organization, it really starts to show in this time. And they get very scared, and a lot of them are going to have a hard time making it. And it's an opportunity they may want to get out. So it's an opportunity to buy some of those companies. And in the past, I've been able to buy some of them. And you can buy them a lot of times just by paying off what debt they have and hiring them, giving them a secure job. And you get a good person who brings a book of business that helps grow your company. So you don't have to give up on the concept of growing during these things. I think there's lots of opportunities for growth. And if you watch your competitors and see who's struggling, and then start watching their work and seeing if it looks like it's slipping, go after that work.
That's great input. I agree with this. These are times of opportunity that you can focus on growth too during difficult times. And it kind of goes to that mindset. Where you said you've been able to do that. How do people go about looking for those opportunities? I mean, these groups, these mastermind groups, the groups that you run, what are some other ways to get out there and for people people to start looking for those opportunities?
Today with social media, I think you can let people know that you're looking, to add to your team, and just put it out there that if they have any interest in selling, you'd be interested in talking to them or teaming up with them, things like that. The other thing is through your trade association, you can mingle with the people in your trade association and just get to know them and who they are, and let them get to know you. Because it works best if you're not calling somebody up and cold calling them about selling their company. That's a hard way to go. It's better if you have some sort of relationship with them, and with your local trade association, that's the easiest way. And you also learn who are the good guys, who are the up and comers, and maybe they'd be, better off if they joined your organization than they would be if they kept doing it on their own.
And I'm going to touch on a point you brought up a minute ago. There's obviously opportunities with acquisitions, but there's obviously been a huge amount of activity on the acquisitions over the last 3 or 4 years. How do you see that playing out over the next 6 months or a year? You've got all these huge companies out there that have been buying a bunch of companies, and so how do you see the industry changing?
Well, I'm not sure, but I do believe that they're still actively pursuing those opportunities now. I think it's a real time to shine for those companies that are able to. There's a lot of companies that are in the United States that haven't been very badly affected by this. They've continued to do quite well, and I would think those would be great targets for the buyers. Their model works in good times and bad times, and
Right.
I know there's still a lot of activity out there from the buyers. It hasn't changed the multiples at all yet. What'll change the dollar amount is if your EBITDA goes down because of this, but not the multiple right now.
Right. As you think back with either growing Ballycrest or you're growing Conserve out of Pan Valley, can you think of maybe a couple pivotal moments in your business as you're growing it on what accelerated that growth? Maybe a couple of key decisions you made, or just to accelerate your business?
Well, I think some of it goes back to what your core principles are. We've always, in companies that I've been involved with, have always wanted to do the best job we could do for the customer, no matter what the conditions were. So we didn't, where some companies would reduce services to try to maintain the customers, we never did that. If we made a reduction, it was really, we just accepted the fact we're going to work for a little less, but we still want to give them the best job and take care of them, because we knew that they didn't really want to cut their service. They needed to cut their price. So we were going to go along with them. And I think those decisions to go along with your customers are the ones that have really paid off the most, where we invested in the relationship, and they recognize it and appreciate it. And I think that always gave us a good referral base coming out of these things. And since we were always fully staffed and ready for opportunity, we were able to capitalize on it when other people had been cutting back and reduced their capabilities. So when the recession turned around, they weren't ready to go, and we were. And that's when we make our leapfrog kind of advantage over our competition.
Right. Yeah, that's great insight. And then the opposite side of the spectrum, you think of maybe, one or two, mistakes that you've made through time that has probably been the biggest impact on just learning from those mistakes through either your own business or growing Ballycrest?
Well, one of the mistakes that I've been really cautioning people on right now is, if you're going to make a staff reduction, make sure it doesn't get tied to a cutback. So once you start a cutback in your company, it just creates a negative vibe through your company where people are going to start thinking about, okay, who's next? And that becomes a real downer in your company. And then the other thing is, if you get to the point where you really do have to make cuts, the mistake is to not make the cuts deep enough and to begin the process of dying by 1,000 cuts. You just have to make a cut, then a month later make another cut, and then another cut, and then you finally get back to where you should have cut to in the first place. So if you're in that position, and hopefully you're not, just make sure you do it deep enough right the first time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Bruce, you just said something I love, the go long with your customers. That's a great phrase and a great mentality. Can you provide a little insights around things that you did to go long? I mean, let's face it, from an operational standpoint, some of our clients are going to have challenges paying us. There's going to be other challenges that lie ahead for us with our customers. What are some of the things you've seen of how you can truly go long with those customers for the long-term relationship?
It's very easy to get talked into cutting your price. And what I found the best way to do that is to let the customer know you're willing to reduce the price for several months, say 3 months. But then it's going to return to the normal price, or you're going to tack on what the cut was over the balance of the contract, or extend the contract for an additional 3 months or something, so that they know you're making a compromise, but that you're also, not making so much money that you can afford to just give up money for.
Great point.
Yeah. So, and then the other things that you can do are, offer to reduce services and put them on a la carte basis, to where they may not need them right away, but when they do need them, then they can pay for them a la carte. And if you do that in a way that you reduce things that they're going to need, they eventually end up buying them anyway. And sometimes sometimes they're just having to make a cut because somebody higher up in the company said you got to cut all your suppliers 20% or something. And they don't really want to do it, but they have to do it. But then you give them the opportunity to buy those services, and they do it out of another bucket of dollars in their budget. And then also, I think, help them with some improvements to their property that, maybe you cut the base services, but you keep the key entry areas in great shape, and maybe even spruce them up a little bit, which might help them with leasing. Or some of them, like if they're office building owners or retail center owners, the tenants want the property maintained. So you got to do things to keep the tenants happy. And I think understanding who's paying the bills and where that money is coming from helps you decide how to work with that customer, whether it's triple net lease or, who's paying the bill.
All right, great. Well, Robert is giving me the signal. We're getting close to the end here, but I'm one of those bad entrepreneurs who doesn't listen very well. So I'm going to ask one question and then wrap it back. Let him wrap it up with you. So we've all been in these businesses for a long, long time. What advice do you have for, people that are maybe going through this, the first time, maybe weren't around during the Great Recession or 9/11? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I think the main thing is it's going to be over someday. And, you want to be thinking about what you're going to look like when it's over. And don't dwell on how painful it is today, because there's going to be better days. And you got to keep your team thinking that way too. If you get into that down mode yourself, your team knows, and they don't want to be on a sinking ship.
No, that's great advice, Bruce. And I think this interview here is just again summed up how people feel about you being that figurehead of the industry, just that calm demeanor, very careful in your replies and your thinking, and definitely people really appreciate that in the industry. So thank you for your time this morning, Bruce. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking with you further. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, guys.
This was the Commercial Landscaper podcast, hosted by Dave Anderson, author of Leader is Not a Title, and Robert Clinkenbeard, author of The Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. You can find more details about the show and the hosts at the radixgroupllc.com or thecommerciallandscaper.com.